Hi, my name is Beth Hiley here for Board Game Geek at Origins 2017. I'm sitting down with Scott Tepper from Rio Grande Games, and you brought us Oktoberfest.
I did.
Give us a very brief, what are we trying to do?
You are a brewmeister trying to supply your beers to the most people, okay? Ultimately, it's about getting victory points. And
you really want them to be in the form of beer and pretzels.
In the beer pretzels? Well, there's pretzel on the board. And actually, your player markers are little beer mugs,
too. Steinpils?
Steinpils?
Steinpils.
That's great. We have to use that.
You're welcome.
So, it's a turn-based game. Players take turns. Whoever is the start player, maybe that's going to be you.
All right.
You might be green. You're going to start with, depending on the number of players, you're going to start with some money and patron markers behind your screen.
Okay,
I didn't put the screens up,
so
but
screens would be
these
like
only go
so.
up, and there's like a little player aid behind there to tell you what you want to.
Which I gotta say, I really like the nice 3D pop that you guys have here, which I imagine is even more evident when this is actually folded the way it should be to look
do you
like.
Want to show them that they can,
right to like that. This is your true brewery here with your kegs along the side.
So, So I didn't put them up here just to be easier for us to have everything down. But you would normally have your money and your patrons behind your screen, and the quantities of these vary. This is a closed economy game, and it's turn-based. So on your turn, you can do one of three things. Okay. One of the things, say you're the green player. I have set up the game with each of these barrels. These are 6 different kinds of ales, and the different kinds, the names like pale ale is one of them, a dark lager. There are 10 of each of the different cards there. These are... I was
going to say, the background's actually indicative of the color of the brew. I know nothing about beer.
I don't either. I'm not a big beer drinker.
Like a dark
thing, a darker
right?
one. I think that was the intention here of having the colors different. But even if you're colorblind, the names are on there, and the symbols are different shapes as well. Okay? Also, to set up the game, we've put a marker by each one of these barrel cards, and we've mixed up this deck. There is the numbers 1 through 7 of each of the different kinds of beers, plus one wild card, 1 through 7, in this deck. At the beginning of the game, we removed all the 7s and the 5s and 6s. They'll come into play later. There's also 3 tapped out cards, which we would normally mix in here, but I pulled them out for explanation purposes. We then shuffle the cards. So right now at the beginning of the game, this is just 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s in the deck, shuffled up, and then put out 3 cards. These are gates of people coming in that we're going to want to push towards the different beer tents, is what we're trying to do. These are people who want different kinds of beers. If you'll notice, so this is a person who just wants pale ale. This person wants a stout. And this number indicates how much they're going to drink. Okay? So you know some people are going to drink more than others. Okay? So on your turn, and let's say you're the start player, because ladies should go first.
Thank you.
So you'll get these markers. This tells you whose turn it is. There's 3 things you can do. You can start an auction for these people, a gate to see who you're going to send into the beer tents. You can sell a beer keg to make some money, or you can start an auction to close a beer tent. Closing the beer tent is how you get victory points in this game. We'll get to that third. So let's talk about usually at the beginning of the game, what everyone's going to do is try to direct people to the tents. So let's say that's what you're going to do. You start the auction with this marker. You'll put
It's a pretzel, of course.
It's a pretzel. Very good. Beer and pretzels. You'll choose one of these gates to say these are the people that you want to send in to the beer tents. Maybe you'll choose this one. Okay. Now there'll be a once-around auction ending with you. I will start first, and I will put out a number of coins that I want to auction to make that decision of where I want to direct these people. So I can either put out some money or not. So maybe I'll put out 2 coins. Now we go around the table. This player can choose to either put some money in or not. Maybe they decide to bid 3. Because I bid 2, they bid 3. Now, as the last person who started the auction, you can either choose to spend 1 coin more to whoever bid the most, or you can take the highest bid. Okay. So let's say you want to make the decision, you will now have to pay 4 to that player, or if you want to let them make the decision, you take their 3 points. Again, this is a closed economy game. I like closed economy games, so this is a finite amount of money for the game. Okay, so let's say you actually decide to pay them 4. This goes behind their screen. You now decide where these people will go.
Amongst the non-closed
Correct.
tents.
So we start the game with one of the tents closed. One of these cards you're going to discard. You can choose which one. Maybe you'll discard this one. Now, when you place these cards, they must be placed on different tents, and when you place them, the rule is as you place the cards, each card placed must go on a lower numbered card or no card at all. Okay? So if there was already you're not supposed to do this, but I'm doing it. Say there was a 4 here, I can't place a 2 on top of the 4. Okay? But if I had a 2, I could put a 4. The numbers don't have to go in order, but you could put a 4 on the 2 is fine. So that was your turn. The auction happened, somebody won, made the decision of where the people are going, what tents. That's the end of your turn. That goes to the next player. We then would refill this with 3 more cards.
We'd be back to a choice of 3 things to do.
Correct. Okay. If it ever gets to a point where 2 of the cards in a gate cannot legally be placed, we close that gate. Okay? It might get to the point that all 3 gates are closed. And if that happens, then the only 2 possible actions are the other 2, which I haven't gotten to yet. Okay?
So let's talk about selling a barrel. I have the feeling that's next.
There was one more point that I didn't tell you is when we if you're the person who wins the auction, to send people to the tents, if you notice there's like a little mark at the bottom, you now get to supply beer to those people. And the number at the bottom, there's a little barrel, that'll tell you how much beer of that type you can supply to that tent. So this tent supplies maximum of 1 barrel of pale ale. So as the supplier, if you won that auction, you can supply 1 barrel of pale ale. And if you decide to be that supplier, you spend 1 coin to take 1 pale ale card. Okay? You also supplied this one over here, which was 1, porter. You could also spend 1 coin to the, I can't see this upside down, porter. There we go. And you could take a porter card. This is how you get these cards. There's only 10 of each kind. You get them into your hand. For the higher number cards, as the numbers get higher, it lets you supply more. So the 3 lets you supply 2.
Put that in the middle there, so our max would be 2.
So 2. So you could supply then 1, or you could choose to supply 1 or 2 barrels. If you supply 1, you pay 1 coin to take 1 card. If you supply 2 barrels, you take 2 barrel cards. It costs 3 coins. 3, if you supply 3, which is the higher, like 5s, it costs you 5 coins. If you supply 4, it costs you 7 coins. If you forget, there's a little chart right here that shows it. Right there, it tells you out. So that's how you get these cards.
Paying for efficiency.
Right. Correct. That's exactly right. You're a gamer, Beth. Look at you. So that's how you get.
Not just here to look pretty.
which would be enough on its own, but it's not. We need your brains too. So this is how you get these barrel cards, which leads us to the second action. Instead of starting an auction on your turn, you can also sell 1 card back to the appropriate pile.
See if I can guess, and perhaps you take the money that's in that box.
You do. Well, you have a choice. You can either take all the money in the matching pile. So if you're selling back a pale ale, you can take all the money that's in the pale ale pile, or you can take half rounded up of any other pile. So that's how you will be getting money back. And notice, like as the number gets higher, you get more cards, it's going to be more expensive, more money. So you'll have the decision of, do I want to start an auction? Do I want to sell a card? But you need these cards to get victory points. So you have the decision of like, do I sell them or keep them? And
knowing that in a closed economy game, a big pile of money can be potentially way more powerful than you would get in an increased economy game.
Correct. So that leads us now to the third action, which is what do you want to do with these? The third possible action is to close a beer tent. So let's say it's later on in the game.
In the evening.
Well, it actually takes place, there's a morning, afternoon, and evening.
All right.
So let's say it's the morning, and instead of starting an auction for directing people to beer tents, or selling a beer card back to make some more money. I decide to close a tent. Now the way you do that is you start an auction. This time, the auction is with your patron tiles, and everyone starts with some patron tiles, starting with the player to your left. So the one who starts this action gets to make the last decision. Everyone else has the option to decide which tent they would like to close, if any. So let's say this player, the blue player, puts one marker here, one patron, and they put their beer sign to say they would like that beer tent to close. And now, Beth, when it's your turn, if you want to make a bid with your patron markers,
so we'll say I'll
you
bid.
You can never bid as much as to make two tents have the same amount of patrons. So let's instead this person bid 2. They really wanted this one to close. You could bid 1 or 3. You could not bid 2.
Okay.
Because what you're doing there is saying you'd really like this to close, but you don't want to spend all your patrons to force it to close. You're hoping that I will help you with it so you don't spend all your patrons. So I really want that one to close. So I'm going to I can't spend 1 because that would mean we'd have the same number here. So I will spend the 2 necessary to make it more than that tent. So now this tent will close, okay?
So it mirrors the similar process we did with the gates in that.
Correct.
One more.
The person who started the action gets to make the final decision what we're going to do. So now this has the most patrons in it, so it's going to close, okay? Now we show from our hands whoever has the most stout cards, because that's the card on top, will receive the total number of victory points. So in this case, it would be 9 victory points with these victory point markers. Right. Right. The player who has the second most number of stout barrels in their hand would get half that amount rounded up, victory point cards as well. Okay. The other players who did not bid patron tokens, these tokens get split amongst the other players that did not bid to close this, so they will get the
points,
benefit.
But
they will get more. They will get
more
the
bargaining
patrons.
power for later.
Correct. This tent now closes. Okay, and we can no longer add any more patrons to. No more people can go to this tent for the rest of the part of the day. And these were spent to other people. These markers came back to us. Okay, if in splitting up the patron markers there's any left. Oh, I'm sorry. And for choosing to close a tent, I get this patron marker.
Bringing a little bit more into the game.
Correct. If there's any left over in splitting up the patron markers, they will go onto the next.
And I'm guessing this is our clock of when the game ends.
Correct. So the next person who is going to close a tent would get any tent markers that are here. Then the next one will close. And now we go into midday, where we would add the 5s and 6s into all these cards, reshuffle, and the game progresses. And then these would go into the evening. Correct. The only other thing is, shuffled into the deck are these tapped out cards. When the first one happens, nothing happens. When the first one comes up, nothing happens. When the second one comes up, then whichever tent has the highest card on it will automatically close. So there's pressure on people as these are building up to try to close it before it gets wasted. Okay?
Yeah, I'm not sure, just as an aside, how much this is going to be visible on our camera, but I am astounded at the artist who did your background image here. That there is literally like a Where's Waldo level of like little people in this image that I am just fascinated by. I mean, look
I have
at
to say,
the
I love the color
art.
here.
Yeah.
Like, I thought it was beautiful. I really like the colors of it.
I mean, I just wanted to, if people aren't able to see this on the camera, it is worth staring at this board being like, that is a lot of meticulously painted little tiny people who are apparently now all getting smashed.
Well, what I thought was actually kind of cute was like, if this is to scale, look, we have a Ferris wheel. And there's a giant pretzel. So imagine how big that pretzel is. I thought that was kind of cute. The only other thing is, why do we have these tokens? Well, it's mixed in the deckers, 1 through 7, there's a wild card. So if a wild card comes up on one of here, when this is placed, you decide what type of beer that is. And so there's a little strategy in making that decision.
How many players?
3 to 5.
Nice. 5 is a popular thing this year.
Is
and
it?
It is, yes. And how long do you think a full game would take?
About, I think if you know what you're doing, it's probably a little over an hour, but the first time we played, it's going to be about an hour and a half.
So if you guys are interested in checking that out, this is Oktoberfest, which is published by Rio Grande Games. And Scott, thank you so much for letting us take a look.
My pleasure, Beth. Thanks for letting me come and talk about it.
Absolutely.